You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tian. In addition to this show, I write for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV. And Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. And Sean, it is home stretch time, 4 games left in the regular season. Packers probably need one more win to lock down a playoff spot.
Most important part of the season, you got to be playing your best football right now, especially if you got the eye on the playoffs and you have an opportunity to clinch a playoff spot. And for those who want to possibly see the Packers clinch a playoff spot in person, Wisconsin's own Ticket King has you covered. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. If you're watching with us on YouTube today, thank you so much for tuning in live. You can see the link right there on your screen, packerstalk.com/tickets. And also, you can watch every episode of No Huddle Radio right here on YouTube. You can watch Gil and I. You can chime in the comments section. We'd love to hear other people's opinions on the Packers and the week ahead and the games ahead. Subscribe to us while you're here to Packers Talk Network. We are everywhere. Spotify, you name it, we're there. And Gil, this is when it's the most fun time to be a Packer fan. And a big reason why it's been very fun to be a Packer fan for the better part of 3 decades, where you're always in the conversation this time of year, and it's way more fun than trying to tank for draft position. And it's an important stretch coming up, and you just hope that you can be healthy and you can be playing your best football at this time.
Hey, I'm old enough to remember the 70s and the 80s where we were often tanking for draft position or trying to figure out, if these 8 things happen, we have a chance to squeak into the playoffs on the last day. So, yeah, it's much more fun when your team is competing and elite and good. And, I've really enjoyed this ride. And this team has been kind of fun to watch. Frustrating at times, but fun to watch.
It seems like it's not as frustrating as last year, where last year there were a ton of growing pains. There's still been some growing pains this year. This is still the youngest team in the NFL right now by average age, and they got younger during the season when they traded away one of their vets in Preston Smith before the trade deadline. But it's clearly a talented group that's ascending at the right time. They're getting better every game. I feel like they're getting better every week, and they're growing together. And I just hope that they have their full complement of guys ready to go. And speaking of injuries, Packers, they've been okay when it comes to the injury bug this year. And knock on wood right there, where in comparison to a lot of NFL teams, they're in good shape. But you got guys like rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd, rookie offensive lineman Jordan Morgan, second-year tight end Luke Musgrave. They're all currently on the injured reserve list. They're all eligible to return from the IR. They've all served 4+ games. As you know, Musgrave, he had ankle surgery earlier this year. He's been out for 9+ weeks after he was placed on IR with that ankle injury. He's actually been practicing this week for the first time since week 6. Marshawn Lloyd it's been Murphy's Law with Marshawn Lloyd this year, where everything, it just seems like he's having the worst luck with every kind of little injury this year, dating back to training camp, with the hip, with the ankle, hamstring, now appendicitis when he was ready to come back really just a short time ago. And then you got Jordan Morgan, who's been dealing with a shoulder issue going back to training camp. Gil, what's the probability that we get maybe at least 1, maybe 2, maybe all 3 of these guys coming up for the stretch run and possibly the playoffs?
I think there's a pretty good possibility. I mean, the fact that Musgrave is already practicing, I think, tells you that they want to get him back if it's at all possible. And, unfortunately for Luke Musgrave, he dealt with the same thing last year. He had the lacerated kidney last year. Played the first 9 games, got hurt, and then returned for the season finale and had a touchdown in the playoff game against Dallas. So he was productive once he came back. And the thing I would love to see, all 3 of these guys, I don't think any of them are going to be the star that carries the Packers. But guys like Marshawn Lloyd and Luke Musgrave, they could play 10 plays a game, but 1 or 2 of them can have a really big impact, add a different dimension, make an opposing defense have to think about things that they otherwise wouldn't have to think about. And we know on the interior of this offensive line, Jordan Morgan can give them some much needed depth. I mean, last week when Sean Ryan was shaken up, Kadeem Telford had to come in at guard for a few plays. No offense to Kadeem Telford, but I would much rather have Jordan Morgan in there, all things being equal.
Now, it is worth mentioning today that NBC 26's John Miller of NBC 26 in Green Bay reported that he spotted Jordan Morgan at practice, but he was in a sling, and that could be a sign that he isn't coming back soon or may not even be back this season. And that's a shoulder issue he's been dealing with in training since training camp, where it seemed like he had a starting spot locked in, and then he dealt with these shoulder issues at the end of training camp. He's been dealing it throughout the season. They put him on the IR. Clearly, it's just been a problem for him for his rookie year. I like what I've seen from Jordan Morgan, the time that obviously there's a lot to work on, a lot to improve, but I think he's going to be a really good player. He's just got to get healthy. But with Luke Musgrave, though, I feel like he's going to be the first one that comes back, and I'm excited for him to come back because he is such a fast guy. He may be the fastest receiving threat on the Green Bay Packers. He may be faster even than Christian Watson. Christian Watson's pretty darn fast, where I believe from what I'm recalling from last year when the Packers were testing the speeds of their receivers last year at minicamp or whatever it was, and Luke Musgrave, I think, had the fastest time on their GPS. That was the fastest recording time of all the receivers. And they have a fast group. There's not a lot of slouches on this team when it comes to the receivers and the tight ends. And you have that speed element at tight end in addition to Tucker Kraft, who's been so good, clear-cut the number one guy at tight end right now. That's really exciting. And just to know that he may be coming back soon is really exciting. Marshawn Lloyd is another explosive guy who can provide a little bit something different out of the backfield as a running back. But Gil, with that all being said, would you believe that Musgrave's probably the first one back? I would think so. Jordan Morgan, I think, is a long shot, but I think Marshawn Lloyd is not far behind either.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see with Lloyd. You know, the running backs rotation right now, and Daryl did a good job in the chat of mentioning this. It's pretty set. I mean, we know Josh Jacobs is sort of the bell cow back. He's going to get the majority of the work. You have Emmanuel Wilson as sort of the change of pace, and then Chris Brooks is the best blocker in pass protection and sort of the third down kind of a guy. So, you know, to me, if we do see Marshawn Lloyd come back, they'll create a package or two for him where he'll play 3 to 5 plays a game, and they'll try to scheme him open or get him one particular play that they'd set up just for him that he would do really, really well. And again, I don't expect him to have this big, impact where he's carrying the team, but just create a situation where he can help. And I think that, one or two plays a game where he could just have an impact.
I do agree where I think if you're ranking who's most important to come back, I think Marshawn Lloyd is number 3 out of 3 on this list, where I feel really good about the running back room. Now, keep in mind, the Packers do have 52 guys on the 53-man roster. It means there is one open roster spot. One of these guys obviously is going to take it. I think the most important guy that needs to come back of these 3 hopefully would be Jordan Morgan, but I'm not holding my breath, especially hearing that he was in a sling at practice this afternoon. That's not very encouraging news for the Packers O-line depth, where it's been an O-line that has played pretty well overall. We've talked about it all this year, where they're one of the better pass protecting units. They've done a really good job in the running game as well. The offense in general is just one of the best. It's a top 10 unit in the NFL. The offensive line is a big reason for that. But you just like to have Jordan Morgan as that 6th guy who could possibly come in at guard or tackle if need be. But with that all being said, where football is a violent game too. There's a chance, and I'm not pulling for this, and I'm not speaking this into existence or anything like that, but injuries happen and funny things happen, and Marshawn Lloyd may be pressed into duty sooner rather than later. And him recovering from his appendicitis too is something interesting, where I believe when David Bakhtiari had his appendicitis a few years ago, Gil, he wasn't back like 2 weeks later or something like that. He was back much sooner than anticipated. Which was kind of shocking. I feel like Marshawn Lloyd is getting closer to returning than we think.
Yeah, and look, you never know. These two things are never identical. So, one person could recover very quickly, another person not as quickly. So you got to be a little bit patient, but hopefully, he's ready.
Yeah, and speaking of Packer injuries, besides the guys on the IR or on the football injury list like Marshawn Lloyd is right now, A few injury updates for the Green Bay Packers right now. Some very promising news, especially with cornerback Jair Alexander, a guy they have really missed the last few games. He missed Thursday's game against Detroit with that lingering knee issue, dealing with that PCL issue in his right knee, suffered on the last defensive play of the game in their Week 8 win at Jacksonville. He's missed 4 games, practically the last 5 after he barely played against the Bears that Week 11 win. But he's been a full participant all this week. Good sign that he's going to come back. You had to think that he was possibly close to returning for that Detroit game. Romeo Doubs still in the concussion protocol, but he has been a full participant in practice this week. Edgerrin Cooper also, who has been dealing with that hamstring issue that he suffered before the San Francisco game and has missed 3 straight games. He's been practicing on a limited basis this week. He told Sports Illustrated's Bill Huber that he is actually ready to roll. Sounds like a good sign that he could be back. Rookie safety Javon Bullard, who left the Detroit game with an ankle issue, reportedly was seen coming out of the locker room on crutches and in a boot. He hasn't been practicing this week. And Evan Williams, the rookie safety, also in the concussion protocol, has been limited this week. So some promising news overall, Gil. Obviously, the Bullard injury news really stinks. Evan Williams being in concussion protocol really stinks. You see how much of a nosedive this Packers defense takes when those two guys aren't on the field.
It makes a big difference, and it limits what Jeff Hafley can do schematically. He's kind of covering up as opposed to trying to be aggressive, and it really changes the entire approach. And then when you add the absence of Jair Alexander, who can shut down one side of the field if he's healthy and doing what he does best, that's one of the reasons that the Packers defense has been so vulnerable over the short middle over the last few games.
And also you got to consider too, where opposing quarterbacks are being very smart. Opposing offensive coordinators clearly are getting in the heads of their quarterbacks saying, hey, we're not throwing deep on these guys because Xavier McKinney, if he's back there, we're not going to test this team vertically. Xavier McKinney's been too good in the deep third of the field where teams are just essentially throwing in that bubble right in the middle in front of Xavier McKinney, inside at those linebackers where they have not done a good job covering the middle. Pass rush hasn't been up to the level that we expected before the season and everything like that. It's just creating openings in the middle of the field. And that's a big challenge for this Green Bay defense. You hope Jair Alexander and Edgerrin Cooper definitely help with that, especially in the passing defense.
Yeah, and Cooper also can add some pass rush. We've seen how effective he can be as a blitzer. So let's see, whether or not that allows Jeff Hafley to even dial up a few more different blitz packages that he hasn't been able to use the last couple of weeks.
And before we talk about the Green Bay defense, let's start out by talking about the Green Bay offense against the Seattle defense. Green Bay's total offense right now, the 6th ranked unit in the NFL. Seattle on defense, the 18th ranked unit. Green Bay's offense, well, been pretty good. They're 7th in points per game this year, averaging 26.8, 10th in passing, 231.6 passing yards per game, and they're averaging 40.7 rush yards per game. That's 5th in the NFL. Seattle's defense, well, they have the new head coach in Mike Macdonald, a defensive mind like the former coach Pete Carroll was. Obviously a great defensive coordinator in his time with the Baltimore Ravens and with the Michigan Wolverines at the college level, your alma mater, Gil. The defense is allowing 21.8 points per game. That's 11th in the NFL. The passing defense has been pretty good. It's not at Legion of Boom level, but it's been decent. 212.5 passing yards per game allowed by the Seattle defense. That's 10th in the NFL. The rushing defense is the weak spot, though, for the Seattle defensive group. 126.5 rushing yards per game allowed this year. That's 21st in the NFL. Gil, the Packers obviously strong rushing attack. Seattle's rushing defense not as strong of a unit. You got to think that's kind of something with that as the matchup we're looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, that's where I started. And, to me, you got to win in the trenches, and the Packers need to run between the tackles. That is Josh Jacobs' strength, and it happens to also be the Seattle Seahawks' weakness. They are allowing 4.7 yards per rush, and in between the tackles, they are 31st in the league according to Next Gen Stats. So, Josh Jacobs leads the league in rushing yards gained between the tackles. You have got to be able to exploit that matchup to make your offense go on Sunday night.
And Josh Jacobs, he specifically has had a good time in Seattle in his career, where the last time he played at Seattle was in 2022, 33 carries, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns when he was a member of the Vegas Raiders, 6 catches for 74 yards as well. including the walk-off 86-yard touchdown run to seal a 40-34 victory in overtime against the Seahawks. He had a monster day, and obviously it was a big day for Jacobs, for the Vegas Raiders, and it just shows what Josh Jacobs is capable of doing, especially in that environment. That's very promising for the Green Bay Packers. And you talk about that Seattle rushing defense. You mentioned that they're allowing opposing ball carriers to rush for 4.7 yards per carry. That's tied for 7th worst in the NFL, where the Packers, they're averaging 4.8 yards per carry in the ground. That's tied for 6th best in the NFL. Give Josh Jacobs the damn ball, man. Just give him the rock. Feed him all day. He's coming off a day where he had 3 rushing touchdowns against the Detroit Lions. Probably should have had 4 touchdowns, but an OPI was called. We're not going to talk about that. That was in the past. We're looking forward. That's what we're going to do as Packer fans. But had 3 touchdowns, though, regardless, in a hostile environment in Detroit. 1,053 rushing yards this year, 3rd in the NFL, and 11 rushing touchdowns. That's tied for 5th in the NFL. The Packers offense, I tweet it all the time, Gil. I know you see it where, hey, the red zone is much better when Josh Jacobs gets touches. Plain and simple. And the offense is better when Josh Jacobs gets touches. It's that simple.
I did an article a couple of weeks ago, and it basically said, in the red zone, Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft. That's kind of what they've been doing since I wrote the article, and the red zone offense has really, really improved over the last few weeks. So not that I could take credit for it, but I'm happy to see that what I saw, the coaches saw too, and they were able to actually, implement some of those changes, and they've been effective. So you got to give the ball to Josh Jacobs. You got to get, because Tucker Kraft, you're throwing him the ball, but it's almost like a run because he doesn't have to be very far downfield and just let him run. So, to me, you got to play to your strengths, and those 2 guys are your strengths in the red zone.
It just feels like the Packers sweep of the Lombardi days where you knew it was coming. You couldn't stop it, though, because it was a freight train, and it was you had Hall of Fame offensive linemen blocking ahead of Hall of Fame running backs. And Josh Jacobs, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Fame running back, but he's one of the best running backs right now in the NFL. Just give him the ball and just do your job on offense, and you're going to get some production, and you're going to get some very positive production on the offensive side. Now, the one guy that the Packers have to account for, though, in that Seattle front 7, and that's the matchup I'm looking forward to, is Leonard Williams. And I'm specifically looking, though, at Josh Myers, the center for the Packers, because he's probably coming off the worst game this season, maybe one of the worst games of his NFL career, where PFF had a grade for Josh Myers in pass blocking of 0.0 against the Lions in that loss on Thursday. He did not have a good game. It was a big time struggle for him. Leonard Williams, clearly the best defensive player, best defensive lineman on the Seattle Seahawks front. He leads the team with 7 sacks and 11 tackles for loss this year. Former top 10 pick, and for a reason. You got to imagine if the Packers are in passing situations, Leonard Williams, Mike McDonald's going to have Leonard Williams just line up right in front of Josh Myers. Because why not? Because Rasheed Walker's been good. Zach Tom's been good. Elton Jenkins is always good. Sean Ryan's been decent. Josh Williams has struggled. You just put your best guy and your worst guy. And now I know there's a lot of help that the Packers can provide Josh Myers. But if that's the matchup I'm looking forward to, because I guarantee you, if he's playing on Sunday, which I don't see why he wouldn't, it's something that the Seahawks are going to definitely adjust, where they're going to put Leonard Williams right in front of him. I could totally see that.
And it wouldn't surprise me either if they also blitzed up the A-gap while they were doing that, so that Josh Myers has to try to cover 2 guys, or even if they're helping Josh Myers, that there are 2 guys coming through, and maybe you have to guess which side of the A-gap they're going to come through. So there are a lot of things the Seahawks can do to try to take advantage of the struggles of Josh Myers, and hopefully Matt LaFleur and the offense are ready to counter that.
And I've been a little more bullish than you with Josh Myers over the last year or so, Gil, but that Detroit game was rough, where it's like, there's not a lot to defend there. And it's clearly an area where, unless Josh Myers takes some significant strides this last month and in the playoffs moving forward, the Packers are going to be looking for a new center probably next year, or they're going to be looking for someone to replace his spot in the line. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's got to be better.
It does. And yet the one game he missed, they clearly missed him.
Yes.
And so, as much as I have been critical of Josh Myers at times, when Elton Jenkins took over as the center, you noticed.
Oh, yeah, big time. It was, and that was in the rain and the snaps. There were a lot of snap issues and everything. we're going to have a probably rain in Seattle on Sunday too. So we'll see how Josh Myers handles that in comparison to Elton Jenkins when it comes to snapping the football on Sunday. Now, let's switch it up. The Seattle offense against the Green Bay defense. Seattle's offense this year, total offense ranked 13th in the league. Green Bay's total defense, well, they match that. They're also 13th in the NFL. The Seattle offense averaging 23.2 points per game, 15th in the NFL. The passing attack has been pretty good, 249 passing yards per game, third in the NFL. The rushing attack hasn't been too great for the Seattle Seahawks this year, averaging 95.4 rushing yards per game, 27th in the league. Green Bay defensively, they're allowing 21.1 points per game. That's tied for 9th in the NFL. The passing defense has taken a little bit of a hit, especially with Jair Alexander sidelined the last few weeks. They're the 21st ranked pass defense unit right now. But the rushing defense has been very good, 106.9 rushing yards per game allowed, 9th in the NFL. They've done a really good job stifling opposing teams' running game, and it's obviously an area where they got to really make sure they shut that down. And you may force Seattle to pass a lot, and that's maybe what Seattle wants to do. But Gil, what's the matchup that we're looking forward to between Seattle's offense and Green Bay's defense?
To me, it starts with the pass rush, and this is weakness against weakness. This is a porous Seattle offensive line and a Packers front four in particular that struggles to get pressure without blitzing somebody. So something's got to give. And the statistics, if you look at the difference between what Geno Smith does when he has a clean pocket compared to what he does when he's under duress, it is huge. And, he throws a lot of interceptions. They almost all come when he's under duress. So you got to get pressure. Now, we talked about Edgerrin Cooper possibly being back. That could help the blitzing game. There is a weakness, though, right now that I just want to sort of focus in on for Seattle, and that's right tackle Abraham Lucas. I mean, the right side of the offensive line has struggled, but no one, I think, has struggled more than Abraham Lucas, whether it's Rashawn Gary or Kingsley Enagbare or Lucas Van Ness or Brenton Cox. Somebody has got to take advantage of that matchup and get some pressure on Geno Smith, because if he has time, he has some really dangerous receivers that he can get the ball to.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about those receivers in just a second, but Abe Lucas had such a good rookie year. They had him and left tackle Charles Cross in the same draft class, and both guys played pretty well, but Abe Lucas's play has definitely taken a hit. He hasn't gotten better since his rookie year, and he has struggled on that side. And you talk about that Seattle offensive line, Gil, 40 sacks allowed this year. That's 9th most allowed in the NFL this season. But you talk about Geno Smith, though, where he's been very much up and down, but more so up, where has 3,474 passing yards this year. That's second in the NFL. 69.5% of his passes are getting completed. 5th in the NFL. He's got 14 touchdown passes, a little lower on that spectrum, but he's thrown 12 interceptions. That's 3rd most in the NFL, behind only Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield of Atlanta and Tampa, respectively. And interceptions have been a problem for Geno Smith. And but when he's dialed in, he's really good. And it's those receivers that I wanted to mention, where you have guys like DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. You also have Tyler Lockett, who's just been a very good veteran for a long time. But DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba, those are the two big guys that I really want to focus in on against, hopefully, Jair Alexander and the Packers secondary. Hopefully they make it a little tough, because Metcalf, we know what he's capable of. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's been the best receiver on the Seahawks this year. He leads the team with 75 catches, 911 receiving yards. Those are both top 10 in the NFL right now, and 5 receiving touchdowns. You gotta find a way to limit these guys, because they're gonna get a lot of balls thrown their way. So you better hope that Jeff Hafley has a good plan to get after Geno Smith and really disrupt what Seattle wants to do on offense.
Yeah, and they can't be as passive as they have been the last couple of weeks. That Geno Smith and these receivers will take advantage, because, both Smith, Njigba, and Metcalf, they run well after the catch. It is not going to be just rally to the ball and stop them right away. They will break at least one play if you let them. So this is going to be a critical matchup, and getting Jair Alexander back and even semi up to his usual standard will be huge for this Green Bay Packers team. They have missed him a lot.
DK Metcalf is one of the most physically imposing and intimidating people I've ever seen. He's 6'4". He's darn near 240 pounds. He can run like the wind. He's really incredible talent, but he's only played against the Packers twice. And the last time Metcalf played against Green Bay was in 2021. Jair did not play in that game because of a shoulder injury, which kept him out most of that season until the playoffs in 2021. He only had 3 catches for 26 yards on 8 targets and a 17-0 loss at Lambeau Field. And then the lone meeting between Jair Alexander and DK Metcalf, and I hope we do get this matchup coming up on Sunday night, was in the 2019 NFC Divisional Playoffs at Lambeau Field. Metcalf was a rookie. Jair was in his second year. Metcalf had 4 catches on 5 targets, 59 yards. Jair had 9 total tackles and a pass deflection. Also had a sack on a key 2-point conversion attempt that helped the Packers really keep the Seahawks at bay and prevent any kind of heartbreak late in that game at Lambeau Field. But you got to think that the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, Brian Grubb, who was on the University of Washington staff last year, it was an offensive coordinator in the national championship game last year, has really done a good job improving the offense in general. You got to think that he's got a plan to get Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba the ball as much as possible. But yeah, it all starts with being able to cover these guys, which the Packers have struggled with recently. They're allowing a 68.1 opposing completion percentage. That's 8th worst in the NFL. But they've also been very opportunistic. 12 interceptions this year. That's tied for 8th most in the NFL as well. And you got to think that this is going to be a couple turnovers could make a huge difference in this game. And hopefully it happens for the Packers defense.
Well, turnovers, the Packers are in a better position right now than the Seahawks on the season. I know you're going to get to that in just a minute, but that does, in theory, work in the Packers' favor.
And speaking of that, let's just go over some key stats and figures. And Gil, we'll start out with the turnover ratio. Packers +9 this year. That's 6th best in the NFL. The Seahawks, they're -4. That's tied for 10th worst in the league. Packers have 24 takeaways, tied for 3rd in the NFL, and only 15 giveaways. That's right in the middle. Jordan Love, big thing there. No giveaways in 3 straight games. Knock on wood. Let's hope that keeps on continuing for the Green Bay Packers. Penalty-wise, these are 2 of the most penalized teams in football. Green Bay's offense, 89 penalties this year, 9th most in the NFL, and 88 penalties this year, also 9th most in the NFL. While Seattle, they've actually been penalized more on both sides of the ball than the Green Bay Packers. 97 penalties on offense for Seattle, 4th most in the league. The defense, 103 penalties. That's 3rd most in the NFL. A very aggressive unit on both sides of the football. And a lot of that with the Seattle offense, you got to think it's a lot of holding calls against that Seattle O-line that has struggled to protect Geno Smith quite a bit this year. 3rd down conversion percentage. Green Bay's offense, 37.6% this year, 19th in the league. Defensively, not too shabby, 36.1%, 13th best. They did very well 3rd down against the Detroit Lions. Just 4th down was a bit of an issue in that Thursday night loss. Seattle's offense, 38% this year, tied for 16th in the league. And the defense, 38%, 17th in the league. So about middle of the pack for both those numbers. And then red zone touchdown percentage. Green Bay's offense has gotten better and better every week since the bye. They are moving on up big time, Gil. 57.4% on offense this year, 12th in the league, 61.4% on defense. That's 10th worst in the NFL. Those numbers definitely would have improved if they would have made a couple 4th down stops in the red zone in Thursday's loss in Detroit. Seattle's offense, 54.3% on offense, 20th in the league. Defensively, they've been pretty good in the red zone, 52.2% this year. That's 11th best in the league. So a lot of numbers that the Packers and the Seahawks are kind of similar with. I feel like the most disciplined team is going to win this game on Sunday, Gil.
Yeah, and it comes down to penalties, turnovers, and then those key situations, those 3rd downs that you need to turn into 1st downs. Yeah, look, this is not going to be an easy game. So we'll see. But, a month ago, it looked easier.
It sure did. And Seattle, hey, they're winning the NFC West right now. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They're playing good football lately. Can't take these guys lightly. And speaking of the Seahawks, a bit of injury news for them. We did mention Leonard Williams. He did not practice on Wednesday, dealing with a foot issue, but also more so it sounded like it was rest for him. Leading tackler, linebacker Ernest Jones, dealing with a knee, but also has been resting this week. And then running back Kenneth Walker. This is the big one to keep an eye on and just keep your ears tuned, keep the antennas up and everything like that. Dealing with a calf issue that held him out of last week's game against the Arizona Cardinals. He has not practiced this week at all. for the Seattle Seahawks as well. Head coach Mike McDonald said he's day-to-day. Sounds like he's trying to push to play this game on Sunday against the Packers in Seattle. So we'll see right there what happens. Walker, the leading rusher, the leading ball carrier for the Seahawks, definitely one of their better offensive players. Gil, why does Green Bay win on Sunday in Seattle?
Green Bay wins if they run the football well, put pressure on Geno Smith, and don't make major mistakes.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Don't make major mistakes. Don't give the ball away. Hey, it's going to be rainy. It's going to be gross. That's how typically Seattle football games are, especially at nighttime, especially this time of year. It's going to be a lot of precipitation. Last time the Packers played in rainy conditions, well, it was against Detroit at Lambeau Field. A lot of drops, a lot of fumbled snaps, a lot of missed snaps. They got to have a better plan for the rain coming up because that's going to be an issue, but you can't give the ball away. And Josh Jacobs, he continues to be the focal point of the offense. That's why the Packers win on Sunday. Why do the Packers lose?
If they cannot stop the Seahawks' intermediate passing game, and if they just make too many mistakes, penalties, turnovers, just the thing that's beaten the Packers most this year is when they beat themselves.
Yep, 100%. Penalties and turnovers. Just avoid those if at all possible. And also, if the Packers lose on Sunday, it's going to be because of some weird stuff that happens in Seattle like it usually does. And the past of the Packers playing in Seattle haunts them again. I feel like something will play a factor if the Packers lose because I can't see this being a very lopsided game. I think it's going to be very tight. Gil, I think you agree with me as well. What's your prediction for Sunday?
Yeah, this one's not going to be easy. I would like it to be. I could use a little laugher now and again.
We all could.
Yeah, but I think that the Packers will find a way to win. Look, it's a hostile environment, Seattle. We know all the terrible things that have happened there over the years, the Fail Mary, the 2014 championship game, all those lovely memories. I think the Packers find a way to get it done. It will be close. The game's outcome will be in doubt in the final 2 minutes, but the Packers win it 31-28.
So you got a higher scoring game than I do. I looked at the weather, and it looks like it's going to be rainy, and I think the rain is going to play a big factor. Seattle's not going to be throwing the ball as efficiently as they could maybe in drier conditions, but who knows? Weather could change in a heartbeat, but Seattle's typically rainy. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, but I do think the Packers win. I think they win 20-16, inch a little bit closer to clinching a playoff berth and get to 10-4. But plain and simple, the more disciplined team will win on Sunday. Plain and simple, the more disciplined team will win on Sunday.
Yep.
And Gil, before we get to some trivia, what articles do you have cooking on Cheesehead TV and the Packers Post?
Well, on the Packers Post, among other things, I took a look at why it is so important to feed Josh Jacobs this week and went into depth about running in between the tackles and how important it's going to be for the Green Bay Packers Sunday night. And I did talk about, for Cheesehead TV, Luke Musgrave and what potential impact his return could have on the offense.
Matt LaFleur is just a dog in the film room. You got to think that he's cooking up quite a few plays for when him and Tucker Kraft could be on the field at the same time, which they have been on the field at the same time very often. So I'm looking forward to that article, and you should be too, to our listeners, to our viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Gil, you ready for some trivia?
I am ready for some trivia.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's no secret, playing in Seattle has been kind to the Packers over the years, as we just mentioned. Infamous moments such as the Fail Mary, the onside kick snafu in the 2014 NFC Championship game. It haunts Packer fans like myself, like Gil, to this day. Now, the Packers last played at Seattle in 2018 when they lost 27-24. But it's been a long time since the road team has won a game in this series. Road teams are 0 for their last 10 in the last 10 meetings between these squads. Last time a road team won in this head-to-head matchup, well, it was in 2008 when the Packers beat the Seahawks in Seattle 27-17. Now, Gil, who were the starting quarterbacks in the 2008 regular season game between the Packers and the Seahawks? I guarantee you'll get one. I don't know if you'll get the other.
Well, Aaron Rodgers, that was his first year as a starter. So that's the one you think I'm going to get.
This other one is not obvious at all. And I'll tell you why in a sec. And And those watching on YouTube, those following along live, if you know the answer to who Seattle's starting quarterback was, don't look it up. I know you have the power of Google and everything in the palm of your hand. Don't look it up. Who started for the Seattle Seahawks in that 2008 regular season game between the Packers and Seahawks? This was also Holmgren's final year as the Seahawks head coach.
Ooh, that's right. It was.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was.
I'm telling you, if you get this, I'm going to be so surprised because
No, I'm drawing a blank.
All right. Well, Aaron Rodgers was the Packers starting quarterback, obviously in his first year as the starter. Charlie Fry was the Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback. Now, Rodgers was in his first year, as you mentioned, Gil, as the Packers full-time starting quarterback. Well, Fry, who was a third-round pick in the same draft class as Rodgers in 2005, he started in place of Matt Hasselbeck, who was out due to injury when these teams met. And it was Fry's only start in Seattle in his career, happened to be against the Packers. Perfect for trivia. 16 years later, he completed 12 of 23 passes for 83 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns, but he was also intercepted twice and sacked 3 times in the game. 2 of those sacks by Aaron Campman, the 2 interceptions by Tramon Williams and Charles Woodson. Rodgers, well, he was 21 of 30 for 208 yards through 2 touchdown passes and also rushed for 1 score in the game. And this marked Rodgers' only win in Seattle in his entire NFL career.
So far.
Yeah, so far. Yeah, I don't know if he's ever going to see Seattle again. He played against the Seahawks this year, but that was in New York with the Jets where he threw a pick six to Leonard Williams, who the Packers definitely have to keep an eye on Sunday. But it's, Charlie Fry, who would have thought, right?
Wouldn't have gotten that one off the top of my head for sure.
Yeah, and it's hopefully we have some good fortune like we did against Charlie Fry. Hopefully we have good fortune against Geno Smith this Sunday. The 9-4 Packers taking on the 8-5 Seattle Seahawks. Sunday Night Football kickoff at 7:20 Central Time. Packers looking to get back on the winning track against the red-hot NFC West leading Seahawks. And Seattle looking for their 5th straight win. Kickoff from Lumen Field scheduled for 7:20 Central, 8:20 Eastern over by Gil, 5:20 Pacific over in the Emerald City. Gil, the Packers are in good shape right now, and they're in good shape to get a playoff spot. A win in Seattle would practically seal one of those 7 playoff spots in 2025. Let's go exercise some demons on Sunday, huh? Let's go get this one.
I'm tired of talking about how bad Seattle is as far as the experience for the Packers. So
it's a lovely city. I'd like it to be lovelier if the Packers could win there.
I want some good memories. Before we go.
They got some great chowder out there in the public market and everything at Pike's Place, man. Come on, just the Packers win. It's going to be even happier for me.
Next time the Packers go, we're going. That's it.
We're going to get some chowder. They got award-winning. They literally take their in Seattle in the Pike Place chowder place. They literally take their chowder over to the East Coast and win competitions there.
Oh, I believe it.
That's how good it is. I've tried it. It's amazing. Just Packers, give me some better memories of Seattle, please. Besides chowder, I need more than just chowder.
It is time. It is definitely time.
Yeah.
So, yes. Well, that's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter update on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.